Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm wondering if you guys can hear me, if you guys can say hi, where you're from in the chat, just so I know that it's working. All right. Brian, hello. Where are you guys all based out of today? All right, we see some people in the chat. Great. Texas, awesome. I'm in New York City. David, obviously, Toronto. All right, well, today, while we're in the chat a little bit, we're going to talk about a growth toolkit for the trades. We have an awesome partner here with Thumbtack that we're doing this webinar with today. So I'm just going to get started and yeah, we can go from there. I'm Wes. I'm your moderator here at Workies. And then we also have David Steckel from Thumbtack, who's the Senior Director of Partnerships and New Ventures over there. I've worked with David for better part of like 2 years on our partnership. It's been a great ride. We've both been able to grow as a company as a result, and I'm excited to get into it today. So just high level overview on the agenda. I'm going to pass it over to David in a minute so he can talk about his story and how he ended up at Thumbtack. He was a former service pro himself, so he has a lot of awesome insight. And then we're going to get into the growth toolkit. So we have about 5 slides there on how you can grow better with your business today. And then we're going to go into a Q&A. We're also going to have some live polls where you guys can be a part of and answer. And then we're going to do a Q&A session at the end. So feel free to save up questions for that or ask them throughout, and we can make this as interactive as possible. I'm going to pass it over to our guest speaker today, and David. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Thumbtack?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure. My background is I have a custom home building background. So I was building homes and sort of high-end residential properties for quite a while. And as most entrepreneurs and folks in home services, we end up saying yes to jobs that just come our way. And so at one point, I ended up with a roughly equal split of residential, commercial, and institutional work. And the business was running sort of in 3 different directions with 3 different sets of subs, 3 different employees, because you have different customer expectations to manage in each one of those verticals. And I realized I had to choose one. And at the same time, I was becoming fixated on facilities maintenance. And a lot of that was around the institutional work, hospitals, airports, army bases. And I just kept getting just absolutely fascinated by the idea of proactive maintenance. And as I was determining what's the single sort of business to build, I realized it was going to be a combination of the 3. So it was facilities maintenance for the residential market with sort of a commercial infrastructure on how we manage the jobs. And so I built that company, and it was sort of a home management company because I realized there was nothing in the residential market that even looked remotely like home management or proactive maintenance or facilities maintenance. And so built Setter, grew Setter, and then Thumbtack acquired Setter at the end of 2020. And now my job at Thumbtack is to focus on distribution of our core experience to net new places where we can find customers and homeowners. While at the same time, how can we evolve our product to meet our service professionals where they are? Hence the integration with Workies.
And actually, awesome. How many years were you in the? Yeah, go.
I was going to ask.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask if there was a poll that we could do around how many people on the call are using Thumbtack today.
There is. So I will go ahead and publish the poll right now. We have 5 or 4 polls we're doing today. So over in the bottom right of your screen, there's gonna be a poll section. So if you guys want to just take a second to go and vote, it'd be great to see. You can choose both Thumbtack and Workies because we're just curious what kind of softwares you're using. But yeah, how long were you in as a service pro before you started Setter?
I would say that it was 8 years, about 8 years. And then, we still have that construction company. We're still building beautiful homes. But yeah, it was about 8 years before it got to that inflection point in the business where it was like, what's next? So, the first couple of years of a business are making sure the phone's ringing. And then you go into optimization, and then you go into sort of a scaling mode. And that's either adding ancillary products or, dramatically scaling your business. So I think I was on that normal trajectory when it was time to figure out what was next.
And then when it comes to growth and profitability, just because this is a key topic of today, how did you know it was time to kind of take the next step? And I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. And like,
Yeah.
what were those next steps?
So there's a lot of questions in the question that you asked me there. So the first and foremost is growth and profitability. And I'll say that I don't know the exact stat, but it's something like 9 out of 10 home service companies go bankrupt because they don't know the difference between cash flow and cash on hand, which means that people don't understand if they're profitable or not. And they're just using the cash flow from incoming jobs to subsidize previous jobs. And so that's number one. And like really understanding your metrics in your business. We're business owners here that happen to be in the business of construction. And so understanding your margins all the way through the funnel is absolutely essential. And there were many exercises over the years where figuring out where you can create the most profit for your business and where is that going to come from. So very simple exercise I recommend folks to do is take your last month of work and try to write down what you did every hour of the day. And if you look at that over a 4-week period, inevitably something along the lines of you went to Home Depot 30 times in a month, or you delivered a material, or you did all of these very unaccretive things that you could probably pay someone $15 to $20 to do. And you have the owners of companies that are doing these things. And so understanding what your time is worth at the hourly rate is also crucial to becoming profitable. So yeah, I could spend a whole hour talking about sort of the metrics that you pay attention to. But the second part of your question was, how did I know what was next? And it was really, we got to the point where it was becoming too difficult to manage these three businesses. It was one business that was in construction, but we had a vertical in commercial, we had a vertical in custom residential, and we had a vertical in institutional. And we needed it to maintain a different trade base as well as staff for each one. And the operational complexity of running three was too hard. So another piece of advice that I give to people is to focus. How can you focus on one thing that you're better at than other people, and then cut the rest out? So that was sort of trial by error. And that's how we ended up. And so now that business is 90% residential.
And did you find like the customer base between residential commercial was like vastly different for you to handle as well?
So the way we got into commercial was actually our residential customers really liked us. And as we moved into more and more high-end projects, our customer base became more executives at their businesses. And when they were thinking about construction, they really trusted us. And trust is a very important part of residential construction. And so they would ask us if we wanted to bid on their office fit out or if they wanted to do XYZ. And that's how we got introduced to commercial. And then when you're in commercial, you have to get approval from the landlord. And so then we started meeting the landlords. And then the landlords liked how we approached things. And then the landlords started giving us work. But really, and we'll talk about this later, maintaining your existing customer base is the best growth hack that you can roll with.
I think that's a really good segue into where we're going from here, which is kind of talking about what are some key essentials to helping grow your business for service pros. So we're calling today's session like a growth toolkit. So we have 5 kind of pieces of advice or 5 topic points to go into. But what I'm curious about from the audience first is, as we dive into a little bit more of the details, are you satisfied with your growth and profitability today? I'm going to release a poll right now, and I would love to see some responses. So it should have just popped up on your screen there. And if it didn't, say something in the chat. All right, I see 1, 2. Okay. Yeah, so it did work. So far, it seems like most people say no, you're not satisfied with your growth and profitability today. Hopefully we can get something valuable for you out of this session. The first piece, as we're looking at the growth toolkit, is going to be your scheduling and availability. So I know this is something that Thumbtack is dabbling into, definitely in the scheduling space. But David, why don't you tell me why this is so important for contractors and how they can leverage their schedule to grow?
First, I'd like to clarify and say that we're not dabbling in the scheduling space. We're going all in on scheduling, because at the end of the day, nothing matters to a homeowner or customer but the fastest path to resolution. So let me repeat that. A homeowner or a customer doesn't care who any of us are. All that matters is the fastest path to the resolution of their current need. And so what that really means to Thumbtack is they just need to have confidence that their project is moving forward. And that could be booking a phone call. That could be starting to prepare a quote. That could be starting a conversation. But to them, nothing matters but the next actionable step. So why that's important for a service provider, and for the construction business as well, there were never enough hours in the day. And there's time spent on the hammer, there's time spent on the back office, there's time spent managing employees. As contractors, we can all go broke quoting. So how can we set up an infrastructure such that we've put some logic in place that allows us to remove the tasks that we shouldn't be doing as the business owners? And a good example of that is that sort of scheduling. We should be able very easily to implement an infrastructure to allow for a phone call booking instead of 4 emails back and forth or 4 text messages back and forth. And it's really just around the rigor that we put into blocking our calendar. If we have plumbers or junk removal companies or locksmiths on the call, you have technicians that have trucks, and field service management is part of your job. You should have time blocks already in your system. And I guarantee all of you do that have more than 1 employee. So all you need to do is really just build up the logic that will allow someone to book for you. And then you start thinking about how many hours you can save. And as a business owner, and to say you're valuing your time at $200 an hour, which we all should be, then you could go sell another job, or you can do something more important than scheduling.
So just to summarize here, would you say it's mostly about removing friction between the customer and their buyer's journey?
No, I'd say it's about hooking the customer, because all they care about is knowing that the next step is being taken, and then they'll stop searching. So we'll talk about response time. That's sort of in the same theme of scheduling. But if a customer knows that they've booked a phone call, or they've booked a site visit, or they've booked something, they'll probably stop searching, which means your likelihood of your conversion has just gone up. So if it takes you 2 hours to respond, or if scheduling is annoying for a customer, then they're just going to psychologically assume that the entire experience with you is annoying, and they're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We see, I mean, on our end at Workies, we'll get into this a little bit more on the next slide, but we have, as part of the scheduling aspect, we have an online booking tool. And I know this is something like live availability and live schedule being on your website or on Thumbtack is like really important. And what we've seen is 10% of people that view the booking tool end up as a paying job, which is very significant. So that means like 1 in 10 visits to your website, to the online booking platform, turns into a paying job because you are hooking them in early. And I mean, that's going to be a better process than sending emails and texts back and forth.
That's it. And remember, like, frame ourselves in the customer mindset. Nothing matters but the fastest path to the resolution of their need. And if they could book something, they've essentially put a check mark aside it and they've said, this job is done. I'm a good homeowner. I can move on to the next priority.
Yeah. I have a few polls I'm going to put out there. One, just curious if you guys have a scheduling software. And then the second poll is, if you do have a scheduling software, or even if you don't, I'm curious what everyone's opinion is on allowing double booking or not. I've heard both opinions. Some people like to keep their live availability so they don't have to reshuffle their schedule. But a lot of pros, definitely that use Workies, like to do the double booking because they just like to ingest the lead into their ecosystem, and then they can always figure out a reschedule, like, hey, I'll come back in an hour instead of 2 p.m. I don't know, David, what your feeling is on that stuff, but I'm curious to know, like, if you prefer double booking versus like live actual availability.
So I don't think it's an either or. I think depends on, one, the category of business you're in. So if you are in a sort of same day, next day, high volume field service management business. So think plumbing, electrical, HVAC, locksmith, garage door, gutter cleaning, junk removal, etc. All of those businesses do multiple jobs in a day, and many of those have multiple technicians. So if you have multiple technicians that are doing multiple jobs in a day and your scheduling software doesn't have the ability to have double booking, what's the point? And then that's at the FSM standpoint of things. For myself, as for calls, you can only book me once. And so my scheduling for myself is just single because I'm not multiple technicians. I don't have multiple technicians for me. So my slots are singular. My business is multiple.
Understood. Okay, so reminder that we have a Q&A coming up, so feel free to start asking questions or save up the questions till the end. I'm going to move on here to the next bullet point and the next topic, which is building your online presence. So when you're looking at your online presence just everywhere, what are some aspects that pros should focus on when they are building their reputations online? And then secondly, in your opinion, David, what are some of the best channels to invest in?
Got it. So yeah, I'll call out here, like, unless you work for general contractors only, you need to have sort of an online presence. And because you're going to constantly need new customers. Not many people need to have a locksmith once a month. And for like the direct to consumer market, they kind of just expect a company to have an online presence now. Otherwise, they don't really exist. So that's number one. Number two is, if you're going to have an online presence, make sure that online presence, that the aesthetic of it matches the level of quality and service that you're going to provide. So all of us have, if you think about Uber, there's Uber Share, there's Uber X, there's Uber Black, there's Uber XL, etc. All of us have different functions in our business, and we have different quality expectations that we provide to customers. So make sure that the look and feel of your online presence mirrors the level of quality and service that you want to provide. So, make sure the photos are high resolution, make sure there's no spelling mistakes, all the basic stuff. And then when you're talking about like what channels, I think it's crucial to diversify your channels. So at any point, one channel can dry up. So it is crucial to have a channel mix. And it is also really important to understand the ROI by channel. So, we might get a ton of referrals from a neighbor or a friend, but they never convert. Or you have like a 1 in 10 conversion, but they send you a ton of leads. At some point, you have to start saying no to that person. Thumbtack is obviously an incredible place to get leads, and we spend a lot of our time on our matching algorithm. If you're working for GCs, sometimes as a GC, the job might not be ready when you get there, and then you have to pull your guys off and then come back another time. That affects your overall profitability. And you're like, at the end of the day, even though on paper your gross margin is really high, because you have to keep going back to site or there's deficiencies at the end, you don't make any money. So channel mix, multiple channels, and ideally get to it's where there's not a single channel that is significantly more than all the others. And then 2, make sure you understand the fully loaded ROI by channel. I would also, as I mentioned before, I would consider your previous base to be a significant channel. So what that means is you should be having significant referrals from your previous base. And if you don't, you should look at that as a gap as well as an opportunity.
So when you're talking about like channel mix, how do you know in tracking like the metrics on the ROI of each channel? How do you know a channel is like a healthy business channel? Is it the canceled? Is it the percentage of cancellations? Is it the number of jobs, or is it just like overall revenue, or is it all of the above?
So typically you can bucket them into sort of channels that you pay for, channels that are organic, and those are usually market partners or sort of et cetera. And then you have referrals. Those are like the 3. So your referral network, your market partners, and then your organic people coming in. And I look at everything. So it's like at the end of the day, you have to say, well, at the job level, was this job profitable? And for you to understand, was this job profitable, you need to understand what was the cost of acquiring the job. And then you have to understand what was the net profit on the job. And if you're doing your tracking right, you know how many hours your technicians are spending on the job, what materials you made, what was your margin. And then what happens is in some cases, you'll learn that certain jobs are more profitable than others.
Got it. I think as we're talking about the online presence of your business, it only makes sense to go into reviews here. And so when you're looking at reviews, I know like there are Google reviews, Thumbtack reviews, all of these types of reviews out there. How important are reviews on a customer's buying journey, especially if they're coming to your business online?
So reviews are just a way of saying validation. And customers, like I mentioned, they're looking for trust. And so when you're talking about reviews, it's really about, is there validation? And that's why word of mouth typically works. Reviews are another way because it's just another form of word of mouth. People can have videos, case studies, etc. But if you're building your online presence, and let's use Thumbtack for instance, Thumbtack is an incredibly cost-effective way to acquire leads. And if you use the tool properly, you can have auto responses in less than 2 minutes. You can increase your conversion rate significantly. And the ROI of a Thumbtack lead is high. And we have, hundreds of people working on that to make sure that it stays high. One of the things that increases your top of funnel on Thumbtack is the number and quality of your reviews. So knowing that Thumbtack as a channel is a high ROI source, and knowing that part of what powers that high ROI source is the reviews, on top of which is your photo, on top of which are the words that you use in your profile. That if you want to have an online presence and you want to diversify your channel mix of user acquisition, reviews are essential. And that's another reason why having your previous base of customers as a focus area for your business is also essential, because you need to be able to get the reviews from them, not just the referrals.
And then, I mean, not all reviews are positive here. So, what should a business owner do, in your opinion, if they do get a poor review?
So we have a concept that we call latte, and it's first you listen, then you acknowledge, then you thank, then you take problem solving action, and then you explain next steps. I would employ that to a negative review, and I would have the mental model of every negative instance is an opportunity. And so the way in which you engage with a negative review can turn that sort of warrior, like that's someone that's angry with your service, into a champion of your service. And when you convert a warrior to a champion, they are going to refer you. It's going to happen because you've done a lot of the work there. And you do it by having a systemized framework and approach to negative feedback. If you choose not to engage with the negative feedback, it will take on a life of its own. And it will make other people start thinking about, well, did I have a negative experience? It's a lot easier to leave a second negative review than it is to leave the first negative review. So I would take control of your online presence and change the narrative of a negative review to something positive. And if you have a bad review, engage with it, fix the problem, and then ask for them to put a positive review on it now that you've dealt with it.
Yeah, I think being proactive about bad reviews and kind of like the process. What did you call it? Latte?
Yeah.
Latte?
Yeah.
All right. I like that. I'm going to start saying that. I think that's a really good approach. And I think this next piece is obvious, but if you're not requesting reviews after jobs, you should be requesting reviews after jobs, whether you're using Workies or not. It should always be part of your journey, your customer journey. At the end, always ask for reviews, because a lot of people, especially millennials and younger, they like the online validation of like seeing someone have a bunch of positive reviews. So I'm going to go into the next piece here, which is speed to lead here. I know this is extremely important to our integration we have with Thumbtack, but B, Thumbtack as a company. So when you're looking at speed to lead, David, why is this so important, first of all?
So the reason why it's so important is to stop the potential customer from seeking out another vendor. You need to stop that search.
Yeah. And then, like, I think you guys probably have a lot of data on this, but like, how quickly should someone be responding to a lead, and what's a good like KPI or goal they can set for themselves for how quickly?
So this is going to sound bananas, but I've looked at this multiple times over the years. There have been multiple acquisitions in the home service space, specifically around speed to lead. But you're going to find that less than 5 minutes for response time has a dramatic effect on conversion. Once you're beyond like 10 minutes, then you might as well be 4 hours.
Yeah, because by that point, someone else probably responded, right? Or
by that point, the customer has left. They're not waiting for you.
Yeah.
If you're taking longer than 5 minutes to leave to respond. So again, let me caveat that this is specifically as it relates to service calls and field service management businesses. When you get into custom home building, it's a lot different. There's a different time. But when you're looking at sort of maintenance, repair, sort of fixed jobs, speed to leave is essential. And they're gone. And there's enough companies out there today that have a less than 5 minute response time that there's, as a customer, like, why would I trust you if you're taking this long to respond?
Yeah.
So many other companies. It is so easy to have less than 5 minute response time now that automatically you're going to have a negative trust balance if you're taking longer.
And I mean, some of the ways that I've seen people increase the speed to lead is having a platform or a system where you can consolidate your leads. And this is honestly best done in an FSM or CRM, just because this is where you're living all day. This is where your payments are, where your estimates are, stuff like that, where your schedule is. And so you're going to naturally be responding quicker. So like integrating all of your leads into one platform are like, it is super important. Also, you may want to consider having someone there to like answer, like an employee on staff to answer any incoming calls, any incoming leads, and paying them to do that. In your experience, David, what are some other ways people can increase this?
So you have after hours call centers are very easy, autoresponders, everyone on this call should be using some sort of management software, be it FSM, CRM, project management. All of them have integrations with companies like Thumbtack. Thumbtack, we've spent a lot of time integrating to make sure that all your leads go into one place. But if you're a field service business, you have a dispatch center and make sure that it's powered. You can also have basic bots, like you can incorporate basic bots into your tech stack today. I think I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this, but if you're in a field service business and you're taking more than 5 minutes for initial response, this is initial response, you're super far behind your competition. When you respond in less than 5 minutes, that gives you almost another 24 hours before the customer, because the customer is confident now. And depending on what that first response is, you could say something along the lines of, I'll get back to you tomorrow at X. That's good enough for the customer. But if you don't have that initial response out, they're gone.
Yeah. One of the things I mean, for those of you that use Workies, one of the things we really push is our automation center can be really powerful to responding to like leads, but missed calls, like, because I know missed calls are a big issue in the service trade space. So if you're using Workies, you should have this automation set up where to trigger any missed call, send an automatic text message, personalized text message out to the customer with your booking link. And so that way you're quickly responding, and like you should be doing this. Sorry, David, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was about to say, it's like you don't even need to respond if you're already giving them a booking, right? So move them, again, fastest path to resolution. That's how we should be thinking. How do we get to the solution as quickly as possible? And in that first response, provide a link to your booking. And Thumbtack has an entire booking infrastructure as well.
Yeah, this is super important because this also impacts your online presence and kind of everything we've talked about. Now, I think as we're transitioning to the last topic here, which is knowing your data, this kind of encompasses everything we've talked about today. But David, why is knowing your data so important? And like, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but like, what types of data can make and break a business?
So again, the make and break your business categorically is the difference between cash flow and cash on hand. What money is just money coming in and out versus what money is yours. Then you have sort of your gross and net margins. Then a shocking number of companies don't finish the job. And so they, you can't, like one of the significant complaints you hear is that job's not done. Customer still owes the contractor money. That less 10% is the net margin. Most construction companies are not functioning on much more than a 10% net margin. And then there's metrics all in between, but there's metrics you track on a daily basis, weekly basis, quarterly and annual basis. I don't want to go into too much detail, but you need to determine if a job is profitable. And so understanding your COGS, understanding your employees, and like fully loaded costs of employees, like including vacation, including workers' comp and all that stuff. And like truly understanding what your net profit of the business is.
And then, so when you're looking at time periods, do you generally like to compare it to like previous quarter to date or previous year to date? What kind of time periods do you like to look at for especially business growth?
So if you're trying to scale quickly, then you have to get more granular. So custom home building is not quick. So we do annual planning and we look at year over year. And then we look at the jobs. So if I was FSM and I was doing, junk removal or locksmith and I was doing 20 calls a day, an improvement quarter over quarter of 20% is extremely meaningful. So I would be quarter over quarter if I was sort of FSM, and then annual if I'm custom, and then everybody else kind of in between. But it's
Awesome.
crucial to know what the job, not just the aggregate quarterly and annual. You need to know which jobs are profitable coming from what sources. And then, a renovator might actually only be profitable when they're doing jobs that are worth $200,000. And they might actually be losing money on jobs that are 500. And so it's like main floor guts might be your sweet spot because you just don't have the team and the expertise to do full guts. You need to understand what jobs you're spiking on.
So understand your job types and what's profitable, kind of to summarize there.
Yeah, specifically. Like it could be like if I was a locksmith and it's like, installing Google Nest products. If someone's doing like smart home, that's my most profitable because it turns out that the installation is, and I'm just brainstorming here, it turns out the installation is really easy and I also take points on the materials. Like you just need to figure out what's the job type that's the most profitable.
Okay. No, that's really good advice. I want to transition here. We have a few minutes left to our last slide. I don't know if I had any questions come in, but I have a question for you, David. Can you talk a little bit about like Thumbtack in general and what the value is of signing up for Thumbtack?
What's the value of signing up for Thumbtack? So we talked about diversifying your channel mix, and Thumbtack is a way for you to meet an entirely new subset of customers. And also there's a forcing function to fill out what are the requirement. It sort of pre-vets customers for you. So every one of us has like, it's easier to get on the phone and speak to a customer and determine the work. Well, with Thumbtack, there's a forcing function to make you choose your job specifications. And then the customers fill that out even before they speak to you. So we don't match you with a customer until they meet your parameters. We call it targeting. And also the cost per lead in most cases is super insignificant. In some cases, it's very competitive as there's a live auction. And then it's also a place to house your reviews and really just be another online platform for potential customers to find you at. And the other part is make sure we don't allow the customer to reach out to, let's say, 5 or 10 pros. That is one of our focuses. We make sure that a customer reaches out, they choose one pro, they send a message to that one pro, and then they have the option to potentially speak to another, but we're not sending out the lead to multiple pros.
Awesome. I really appreciate that, and really appreciate your time today, David, and thanks everyone for joining. If you want to rewatch this, this is always going to be available on your link that you used to log in today. So everyone in the chat, if you go back to this link, it will be available on demand, even for the people that registered that didn't show up today. It will always be available on this link. Any parting words, David? And again, appreciate your time today and appreciate your effort and your partnership.
Yep. Parting words are, again, get a handle on cash flow versus cash on hand. That's the number one most important. And then number two is diversify your channel mix and make sure you have leads coming in from multiple sources, and pay attention to those sources and optimize each one of them, and then cut the ones that aren't performing. I know in my business previously, we were getting lots of certain word of mouth referrals were just bad for us. And then we realized that we preferred to get referrals from market partners versus sort of certain other folks. So ruthlessly prioritize your time.
Understood. All right. Well, I appreciate it again, and thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and end the event. I'll stick around for another minute or so in the chat if people have any other questions. But thank you again. See you next time.